Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Today we'll do Hello World program using Native Hibernate configuration. So in my previous video, we have developed a program where we have stored Hello World message into the database using JPA configuration. But this time we'll use Hibernate configuration. The other thing remains same, like the persistent class, persistent unique, and logic to store and retrieve messages. Most of the things are similar. There is no difference. But the configuration what we are going to use this time is little bit different what we have used for JPA configuration. So you can see the diagram here. In JPA, when we have used the JPA configuration, that time we have this entity manager factory where we have the connection details regarding the uh, database, including some other configuration. But here in native Hibernate configuration, we have to use session factory. And there in the JPA configuration, we have persistent.xml file. But in native Hibernate configuration, we can use hibernate.properties file or hibernate.cfg.xml file. And if you remember where we have stored the persistent.xml file, the location and the hibernate.cfg.xml file location is completely different. So we'll see in this tutorial where we are going to store the configuration file. So this is the fundamental difference between the native Hibernate and the JPA Hibernate configuration. So at what time you should use native Hibernate configuration? Whenever a feature you wanted to use that is not there in the JPA configuration and that is there in the native Hibernate, that time you can use the native Hibernate. So in most of the cases, you may not need this native Hibernate configuration, but it is good to know how we can use the native Hibernate configuration. So let's start without delaying. So I will use IntelliJ to create the project. So last time we have developed this one Hello World JPA Hibernate. So this time I will create a new module Hello World native Hibernate. Okay, the module is created, and this time we will use the same dependencies that we have used last time. That is the Hibernate and the driver required for our application. So dependencies. So just I will copy and paste those dependencies whatever we have used last time. Okay. Okay. So the Hibernate entity manager will be using, and MySQL connector as the driver will use, and we'll use this JUnit for testing our application. So inside src main Java, we need message.java as a persistent class. That class we already have developed last time. I will copy and paste it here. Copy it from here and paste inside this folder Java. Okay, paste it here. Okay. So this class contains the ID and text. ID here is the primary key, and text is a field that we are going to store the hello world message. And here are the setter and getter method to store and retrieve messages with the help of these methods. So we have annotated this class with the entity so that it is recognized by the JPA or Hibernate as a persistent class. So far we have configured the dependencies and we have configured the persistent class. The next thing what we are going to do is we'll write logic to store and retrieve message from the database. And before that, we have to create the persistent unit. So last time, if you remember, for Hello World JPA Hibernate program, we have created persistent unit inside resources meta-env persistent.xml file. So this time we'll use we'll create the configuration file inside the resources, and we did not to create that meta-inf folder. So when we are going to use the native Hibernate configuration, that time we do not need to create the folder meta-inf. Here we will be storing hibernate.cfg.xml file inside resources folder. So we have two options to create persistent unit for native Hibernate configuration. One is we can create hibernate.props folder props file. The other one is hibernate.cfg.xml file. Any one file you can use. So we'll be using hibernate.cfg.xml file, and the location would be inside resources folder. Hibernate.cfg.xml. Okay, so this is the configuration that I have inside the hibernate.cfg.xml file. And one more thing, you can have this configuration file inside src main resources, or you can have this file inside src test resources folder. It is up to you. Wherever you wanted to keep this configuration file, you can keep it, it will work. So we have created this persistent unit. So this persistent unit contains the driver details, the connection URL details. It contains the schema name. In my case, it is test. So whatever the schema name you have, you can replace it with, and the username and password you have to set it here. Okay. So the other configuration, that is Hibernate DDL auto. So this will create necessary tables at the start of the application. So in our case, we have this persistent class message. So this will create a table called message table. Okay. In the name message, it will create. So far, we have created persistent class, persistent unit, and dependencies required for our application. Now the next thing that is pending is to test our application and the logic to store and retrieve message. So I will create a test class and will test the scenario with the help of JUnit. So inside this, I will create a new Java class. Hello world test. Yes. So now, so the first thing that is required for our application is the session factory. If you remember this diagram, in our previous example, we have used entity manager factory, but here with the when we are using the Hibernate configuration, that time we need the session factory. So we'll create the session factory. Session factory. Create session factory. Okay. So first the configuration. New configuration. Service registry. Standard service registry. Service registry builder. Dot apply settings. Configuration dot get properties dot build. Okay. build session factory service registry. So this is how we have created our session factory. First, we have created the configuration and we have added the persistent classes to it. After that, we created the service registry. After that, we attached that service registry to our configuration and created the session factory. So this is how we have created the session factory. This session factory uses the persistent unit, whatever we have defined inside the hibernate.csv.xml file. Okay, so now we'll write logic to store our message to the database. Store and load message. Okay, session factory, session factory. So we'll just get the session factory. After that, we'll open the session. Okay, session factory dot open session. Fine. Next, we'll start the transaction. Yeah, that's it. Now the next thing, we'll create the message. Message, new message, new message, message dot set text hello world, hello world. Okay. Now what we'll do is we'll persist our session dot persist message. After that, what we'll do is we'll commit our transaction what we have started. Session dot get transaction dot commit. So this will store message into a database. So we'll test this one first. I will annotate with test. Okay, fine. So I will open my database here. So I will use my schema use test. I will try to find the table. There is no table. You can see your table message doesn't exist. So far, nothing is created. So I will run the application. Okay, if you see here at the end in the console message, if you see insert into message and values that is generated by our application in the console. We'll go here, we'll check whether the table is exist. Yes, the table created and hello world message is stored inside the table. Now what we'll do is we'll try to read that message or fetch the content to our application. So let's do that. So we'll start a new transaction, session dot begin transaction. Okay, after that we'll create a criteria query. So what we'll do is session dot get criteria builder, session dot get criteria builder dot create query, and we'll pass our persistent class here. Okay, criteria query. Fine. Query dot from message dot class, session dot create query. So we'll pass the query here, get result list. Okay, that's it. I think This is the logic to read, and we'll just commit the transaction session dot get transaction dot commit. Okay. So after that, either we can print the message or we can validate. I will print it here. Text. Okay. So we have started the transaction. After that, we have created a criteria query to read data from the table, that is message table, and we have passed the persistent class message here. And after that, we committed the transaction, and when we are trying to print the message, whatever we fetched from the database tables. So let's check it. Okay. If you see here, the first one is printed insert into message text and values, that we already have discussed at the beginning, that while we are storing this message, this query is generated by the Hibernate. And the second one, while we are fetching data from the database table, that time it is generated. So the criteria query, whatever we have written, for that, this SQL query is generated. And at the end, we have validated the, not validated, we have printed the value that we have fetched from the database. So this is all about Native Hibernate Hello World program. And one more thing here I wanted to mention, the configuration file what we have created here, that we can place inside the test folder as well. Inside test, we can create a resources folder. Inside that, we can have this Hibernate cfg.xml file. It will work similar way. There is no change in the application. So we'll see the diagram here. If we compare the two program, the Hello World using JPA Hibernate and Hello World using Native Hibernate. So, so in the first program, we have used Entity Manager, and here we have used Session Factory. And first one we have used persistent.xml, and here we have used Hibernate cfg.xml. So here we have two options. We can use also Hibernate properties file. So we can use this native configuration whenever any specific feature is not available in JPA configuration, then only we can use Hibernate native configuration. So this is all about the Hibernate native configuration Hello World program. Thank you.